Hello and welcome to the CX Files for April 25th, 2024. My name's Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And tell me, Mark, where did the month of April go? I'm Peter Ryan in Montreal and eagerly anticipating landing in Atlanta for CX Outsourcers in just a few short days so we can catch up and throw back a few glasses of Diet 7-Up.
I am actually flying tomorrow to the US, and so I will be spending this coming weekend in Washington, D.C., visiting our good friend, Mr. Lloyd. And so I'm sure that he will be arranging a nice Irish Sunday lunch for us.
Well, I hope that you enjoy that. Stephen Lloyd is a wonderful host, and Washington has no shortage of venues in which Irish lunches can be enjoyed. I personally really like one that I found not far from Capitol Hill. I seem to recall going in there several years ago with a number of friends, and it was about 2 p.m. And by the time we left, it was still 2 o'clock, but 12 hours later. So proper Irish time, and it wasn't even St. Patrick's Day. So anyway, look, Mark, we've got a really interesting chat this week with Alex Muñoz. Now, Alex is going to be speaking at CX Outsourcers. He's one of our keynoters. And Alex comes at a very interesting angle. So he is based in the United States, in Texas. He is the CEO of the Hispanic Media Center. Now, the reason we asked Alex, who's certainly a friend of CX Outsourcers and definitely a friend of ours, to come and give a talk is because, as we mentioned, we're doing CXO in the United States, in Atlanta, and there's, I think, maybe some misperceptions about the importance of the U.S. Hispanic market, or perhaps even a lack of awareness. One of the things that strikes me when I'm advising my clients from overseas who are looking to try and implant themselves in the United States is the extent to which they need to take into consideration the Spanish language, the U.S. Hispanic culture, which I think we can argue is evolving in such a way that is very different from the culture in somewhere like Mexico or Colombia or other Central American or Caribbean countries. And Alex's role as CX Outsourcers is to give that level of insight. It's to give that level of understanding to not just companies or executives coming in from different parts of the world, but also to maybe American BPO operators that might need a refresher in terms of where the U.S. Hispanic community is sitting right now as a customer base, as a subsegment of the broader American population. And I always like to throw this statistic out there, especially when I'm speaking overseas. And I always like to tell people and get their reaction when I say that the number of people in the USA that count Spanish as their mother tongue is actually bigger than the population of the United Kingdom. It's bigger than the population of France. And it's the fastest growing demographic in the United States. So if you don't have a proper solution or a strategy around the US Hispanic community, which is not just growing in numbers, but also in terms of real incomes, much faster than most other demographics, then you're losing out on the ability not just to connect, but to secure a very, very strong and loyal base of customers over the long term.
Yeah. I think that within this kind of CX community, we often compare the US market with Europe, where multilingual support is obviously very important because you're talking about customers that may be shopping at Decathlon which is a French company, but then serves the whole of Europe and obviously needs to serve customers in all those different languages. So you sort of have a more natural understanding of language and culture being important over in Europe. And there's often seen as this kind of like, cultural monolingual block of the US, where clearly that's not the case. If you have more first language Spanish speakers in the US than the whole population of the UK or France, then clearly you're talking about a very significant number of potential customers. But I think what Alex also made clear was that it's not just about Spanish, the language, it's about the culture and understanding the difference between Mexican or Puerto Rican or Cuban consumers. And although they are sort of geographically distributed around the US in different areas, a really smart strategy will go deeper than that and actually sort of try to look at these different groups of people in different ways.
Well, that's really, I think, at the heart of what Alex is going to be discussing, and it's why we're really excited to have him at CX Outsourcers. So Mark, I couldn't be more delighted to go to your chat with Alex and find out a little bit what he has to preview for us for his talk at CXO.
Okay, let's go for it. Just one more preview to go, folks. Alex, it's great to get you on the podcast. I think this is your first visit to the CX Files, so welcome. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in person soon at the CXO conference in Atlanta. And I believe that you are going to be talking, you're delivering a keynote speech about the Hispanic market in the UK and why this really matters for customer service executives, especially those that are kind of often they look at the United States as a sort of like a single block. And I believe that your view is that actually there's a great deal of diversity that we need to be aware of in that market. Is that true then?
Exactly, Bart. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to talk to you today. Right from now, I'm visiting in Mexico City, so we will meet soon in Atlanta, and I can hardly wait to be there. Yes, it is my first time on a CX convention, but I'm very excited, because it's quite a market that is growing so fast, and we need to be aware of that. And thank you so much for the introduction. Yes, we're going to understand and try to see from different angles how's the Hispanic market in the United States currently, because it's a market that is growing. In the past few years, it's grown 4 times since 2020 to 2024. So I guess sometimes we as Hispanics, we are, I think that we are a little bit like rabbits because we reproduce very quickly. So it's actually the largest population in the growing terms in a short time. So it's going to be really interesting to get to know that and see how big is this market, because now on we're talking about quite near the 20% of the population in the United States. So it's growing like a large number, and it's been a powerful group that is growing in the United States.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I know that obviously this differs from one state to another, but then if you're kind of averaging across the country, you believe that at least 1 in 5 adults would prefer to use Spanish as their first choice for customer service then.
Exactly. Yeah, we need to know who is at the other side of the line, because it's interesting how different even as we all speak Spanish, how different we are between, the North Central American, and the South American. So it's going to be quite illustrious, I guess. It's going to be something that we can understand and be more effective to who are we talking to in terms of the Hispanic population in the United States. Right now, we're talking about around 62 million people in the Hispanics in the United States. So, for example, if we think about the UK, for example, UK has like 67 million people in the UK. And in just the Hispanic population in the United States is around 62 million. So it's quite impressive what we have here.
Yeah. So that kind of puts it into context that you could take the entire population of the UK and that's the Hispanic population within the US, which is clearly significant. Because I was going to ask you, and I think maybe you've just answered it, but if I was the boss of a major retailer in the US, why would I feel that I should need to differentiate my service? Why wouldn't I just serve everybody the same way? And I'm guessing you'll say that actually there is such a significant minority of people that would prefer to be served differently, that it just makes good business sense.
Yes, exactly. Because mostly it's composed by Mexican heritage habitats, people. But also there's a growing segment of the people who comes from Puerto Rico, which is also an American part of an American province. And we have people coming from Cuba, we have people coming from Venezuela, Argentina is growing also, and a lot of Central Americans, mostly composed by Honduras and Guatemala. So each each ethnicity, let's say, it's very different because we have been grow in different ways. We might speak the language, but maybe just to give you a quick example, there's a word called machete. And machete for people in Mexico means a large knife, but machete for people in South America means man. He's my husband, like he's my machete. And some in Argentina is actually it's a scam. It's like if someone tricked you to do something wrong. So he made me a machete. So it's kind of even the same word means different things depending on who are you talking to. So you have to reach them in a different way and know who is the highest of all the different Hispanic heritage people that you have in front of you. So you can reach them and talk them in the same language.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm British, and I can see that with English speakers around the world. You know, the Americans speak a completely different type of English. When my daughter watches Bluey, the cartoon on TV, which is from Australia, and you hear completely different slang words in that, and the same in India. Sometimes there's vocabulary in Indian English that people would never use in London. So you can see exactly the same kind of thing. I guess how is that important? That kind of regional awareness or awareness of the Spanish language, the Hispanic diaspora. Where is that important for somebody that's planning a customer experience? I mean, would that be for maybe like a bank, for example, that wants to understand their customers in more detail? I mean, where would this kind of knowledge be of value within the customer service strategy then?
Yeah, exactly. It's a very good question because, for example, as we're talking about a bank, there are even different customs or a way of growing up on financial, um, let's say, teaching or how you learn from your parents and your grandparents how to administrate the finances. So, for example, in Mexico is spend it first and then find out how to pay it. But people from maybe in more in Chile's or more in South America, in Argentina, they tend to first save and they use the savings before spending them. So it's kind of different the way we grew up. How's the culture on financials, and also that will be something good to know when you're trying to reach a proper segment of the Hispanic population, because it's sometimes it's very complex, and we as Hispanics, because I talk about myself too, that I was born in Mexico, so and raised in Mexico, but and now I live in the United States for quite a few years now. but it's how amazing how we always are connected to the family or to nostalgic products, those that we grew up with, that connects us with our childhood. So that's something that some brands see an opportunity, and they relaunch some products that they are already out of the market in Mexico, and they just relaunch them in the United States. So you can say, oh, it's like my grandmother's chocolate. So you run to the stores and buy that just to feel that nostalgia again. So that's a little bit how also this grows, and the economy for the Hispanics is also growing quite a bit. So just to give you an example, Mark, if you have Los Angeles, for example, and just take it out of the United States, it will be the eighth economy in the world. So, and Los Angeles is basically composed by Mexicans.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's an interesting fact over there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and of course that nostalgia is interesting because we know that Peter Ryan will buy anything from the 80s. So I think those executives have got him in mind as well.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's wrap up. But I just wanted to ask you a question then about the stereotype, because you talked there about Los Angeles being largely Mexican. But if I am, let's say, an Irish American executive based in Boston, but I'm in charge of customer service for my brand across the whole of the United States, then how do I go about understanding the differences in the Hispanic community? Because the kind of lazy stereotype is that it's predominantly Mexican, but clearly there is a lot more complexity than just that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's important because the first thing that you have to do is visualize the map of the United States, because the good thing about it is that they are located in specific areas. For example, if you are in California, mostly is Mexican. If you are in Texas, mostly is Mexican. But if you go to Florida, it mostly will be Cuban and Puerto Rican. If you go, well, mostly Cuban. And if you go to New York, it's mostly Puerto Rican. So it's where you want to where you want to reach, the strategy that you must elaborate. So it has to be very local, do a very good segmentation to do reach them effectively, and that's the way, because you can make brands like, I don't know, McDonald's, that they make a national wide campaigns, and they just do it in a plain Spanish, uh, and try not to get too deep into it. Just say, come here, and this is what we offer, and I hope you like it, and that's it. But if you want to reach them effectively, you have to know make a strategy for each and every state, so you can have more to feedback coming back to you, more return of investment.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Alex. Clearly, there's a lot more detail, but we are going to go into that in much more depth at the CXO event. So thank you for this preview, and I'm looking forward to meeting you and hearing you speak in person.
Well, it will be great to meet you also, Mark, and yeah, I'm really excited, as I said, to be there and in the upcoming event. Thank you so much for having me, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.